I was standing in my mother's kitchen on Thanksgiving morning, basting the turkey like I had done every year since I was 20, when she walked in humming the familiar tune she used whenever she felt especially pleased with herself. She leaned against the counter, smiled at me with that knowing, superior smirk she saved for very specific occasions, and said, "Your sister's wedding was great." "When's yours?" She said it lightly, like flicking a crumb off a table, careless, but deliberate. I felt the spoon freeze in my hand. The heat from the oven hit my face, but my blood ran colder than the November wind rattling the windows. I took a breath, smiled back, and calmly replied, "I had mine." The room went silent. She blinked. She didn't know. None of them knew. But they were about to. And that, right there, was the moment the story truly began. My name is Anna. I am 52 years old, divorced, financially stable, and, something my family never really acknowledged, content. But in my family, particularly in my mother's world, women existed on a simple scoreboard: marriage, children, social appearances. If you had all three, you were considered successful. If you had two, you were trying. And if you only had one, well, you were failing, but maybe fixable. And if you had none, like me, especially after my divorce, you were the running joke. My younger sister, Melissa, had always played the golden child. Blonde, delicate, emotional in a way that seemed endearing to my mother. I, on the other hand, was practical, sharp-minded, and never made drama. Those traits helped me build a business and raise myself financially out of the mess of my childhood, but to my mother, they were flaws. So, after my quiet courthouse wedding to a man who turned out to be a fraud, followed by a quiet divorce, my mother pretended my entire marriage never existed. "Anna will get married someday," she would say cheerily. "She just needs to try to be softer. She needs to lose weight, dress nicer, stop working so much. She needs to stop thinking she's too good for everyone." I heard it all. But the worst part was Thanksgiving, every single year, where my achievements were swept under the rug and replaced by, "Maybe next year you'll have a wedding." But this year was different. This year, they pushed me too far. The house filled with relatives by late afternoon. My mother loved to flaunt her social standing and her newly remodeled kitchen. She treated holidays like personal award ceremonies where she accepted compliments like trophies. I sliced the turkey, I set the table, I stirred the gravy, because in my family, if you're the unmarried daughter, you do the labor. When everyone gathered around the table, wine glasses clinking and laughter buzzing around the room, I felt the familiar tightening in my chest. I knew what was coming long before it happened. It always happened. Sure enough, halfway through dinner, after Melissa had already shown off her new diamond earrings from her husband, after people praised her wedding photos and toasted to her honeymoon in Italy, my mother decided it was time for her favorite annual performance. She lifted her glass. "A toast to my beautiful daughter Melissa." She began. "Your wedding was elegant and perfect. We are so proud." Everyone clapped. Then her eyes slid toward me, and Anna. She paused dramatically, as she always did. "When are you getting married? You're not getting any younger, you know." A few relatives giggled. One uncle muttered, "Yeah, Anna, don't wait forever." A cousin whispered loudly, "Maybe she's too picky." Another chimed in, "Or maybe men don't want someone so serious." I felt heat behind my eyes. My mother sighed in mock sympathy. "It's okay, sweetheart. Melissa can help you find someone. You know, someone who doesn't mind your independent personality." The entire table laughed. But this time I didn't swallow the hurt. This time I didn't force a smile. Instead, I placed my fork down gently, wiped my mouth with the napkin, and said loudly enough for the entire table to hear, "Actually, I already had my wedding." Dead silence. 20 pairs of eyes stared at me. My mother froze. "What do you mean?" she said, confused. "You've never..." "Oh, but I did." I leaned back and let the moment stretch. "You just chose to forget it." A ripple of shock spread around the table. But this wasn't about my forgotten wedding. This was about everything. And I had come prepared. Let me take you back. At 28, I married a man named Daniel. He was quiet, intelligent, financially struggling but ambitious, exactly the kind of man my mother did not approve of. He's not good enough, she said. He's plain, she said. He doesn't earn much, she said. He's boring, she said. So, instead of a big wedding, my husband and I had a simple courthouse ceremony. My mother refused to attend. She told relatives she was busy, but I later learned she threw a brunch with her friends that same morning. We built a life, small apartment, modest jobs, shared dreams. For years, no one in my family asked about him, invited him, acknowledged him. They acted like I was playing pretend. Then he got sick. Very sick. A rare autoimmune disease that attacked fast and mercilessly. My mother didn't visit. My sister didn't call. My family didn't send a single card. I spent 3 years caring for him, watching him fade from the world. I sold my car to pay medical bills. I worked nights to afford his treatments. He died at 38. At his funeral, only 3 people stood beside me, none of them my family. When I returned home, my mother hugged me awkwardly and said, "You're free now. You can find someone better this time, better. Better than a man who loved me enough to write letters for me to read after he died. Better than a man who said, even at the end, I'm sorry to leave you alone. Better than a man who begged me not to lose myself trying to save him." I spent years grieving until I rebuilt my life from scratch. I didn't date again. Not because I couldn't. But because I had already loved enough for one lifetime. But my family, they erased him like he had never existed. That day, something inside me hardened. I hadn't planned on revealing everything at Thanksgiving. But the constant humiliation. The way they worshipped Melissa's wedding while pretending mine never happened. Something broke. My mother stared at me across the table, jaw tight. "You're being dramatic, Anna," she said finally. "If you had a wedding, why didn't we hear about it?" I smiled. "Oh, you heard about it. You just didn't care. You didn't approve. So you pretended it didn't happen." Relatives shifted in their seats. I could see guilt flashing across a few faces. My mother frowned. "Well, you should have insisted we come. You know how busy we were back then," I laughed softly. This was why I prepared. I pulled my phone from my pocket. "I brought something to show you all," I said. With slow deliberation, I opened a folder titled Daniel. Photos, videos, messages, our entire life, projected onto the TV through the screencast button. My family watched our courthouse wedding. They watched Daniel smiling, holding my hands. They watched him laughing in our tiny apartment. They watched him walking with me in the park. They watched him growing pale, thin and frail. They watched me holding him in his hospital bed. A few relatives wiped tears. My mother's face reddened in humiliation. I let the silence choke the room before I spoke. "You didn't miss my wedding because I didn't have one. You missed it because you refused to acknowledge the man I loved." I turned off the TV, "But that's not the part that hurts the most," I said quietly. "The part that hurts is that when he died, none of you called. None of you asked how I was. None of you cared." My sister whispered, I didn't know." "You didn't want to know," I replied. At this point, my mother slammed her hand on the table. "That is enough, Anna. This is Thanksgiving. Why are you ruining it with this? This sad performance?" I smiled coldly. "I'm just telling the truth. Something this family avoids at all costs, but that wasn't the revenge." "No, the revenge was still coming." "Fine," my mother snapped. "So you had a little wedding. You made your point. Now let's move on." Little. That's when I knew. She would never admit what she did. Not unless I forced her to. I took a deep breath. Mom," I said, "since we're talking about weddings, there's something else the family should know." Her eyes narrowed. "You remember how you paid for Melissa's wedding?" All $42,000 of it, she smiled proudly. Of course. And you told everyone you couldn't contribute even $1 to mine because you were broke, she stiffened. I continued, my voice calm but loud enough that even my cousin's children stopped eating. Well, I recently found something interesting. I reached into my purse and pulled out printed bank statements, my mother's, which she accidentally emailed to me months ago when she confused my email with Melissa's. I saw transactions, I said, for a spa membership, a trip to Dubai, and the down payment for Melissa's honeymoon, all made the same year you claimed you couldn't afford to help with my husband's medical bills. My mother went pale, and that's not all, I added. You also transferred $15,000 to Melissa for her wedding dress fund the same month I asked you for money to buy Daniel's medication. Gasps filled the room. My sister whispered, Mom. Is that true? My mother stuttered. Well, Melissa needed things. And I didn't? I whispered. My voice cracked for the first time. You let me watch my husband die because you chose favorites. A tear fell down my cheek. The room was silent. You could hear the fireplace crackling. Then I dropped the final blow, and that is why I'm done. I stood up. I'm selling the house, I announced. My mother blinked. Your house? Why? Because I'm moving out of this state. I got a job offer out west, and I accepted it. Shock rippled around the table. But who will host the holidays? One aunt asked. I laughed, not me. My mother sputtered. Anna. You can't just leave, you are the one who helps with dinners, the chores, the planning. That's exactly why I'm leaving, I said. I'm tired of being the family servant. The family embarrassment. The family scapegoat. My sister whispered, but you can't just cut us off. I'm not cutting anyone off, I replied, I'm simply choosing myself. I looked at my mother. I gave this family everything I had. Years of work. Loyalty. Love. You treated me like nothing. You humiliated me. You dismissed the greatest love of my life. My voice sharpened, so now, I will disappear from your lives just as easily as you erased mine. I picked up my coat. My mother finally stood, desperate. Anna, wait, don't be childish. You're overreacting. That word. Overreacting. I turned back, looked her directly in the eyes, and said, no. I'm finally reacting. Then I walked out. And let the door close on all of them. I moved 3 states away. Sold my house, closed my old business, and started a new life. A quiet life. A peaceful one. I found a small cottage near a lake. I grew herbs. I adopted a dog named Milo. I took long walks. I slept without nightmares. But the best part? I rediscovered myself. I traveled alone. I took pottery classes. I read by the fireplace. I visited the places Daniel once dreamed of taking me to. And I never, not once, looked back. My family sent messages for months. At first angry. Then confused. Then pleading. I never replied. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't loud, messy, or dramatic. Sometimes revenge is silence. Distance. Healing. Choosing yourself after years of being overlooked. And letting people feel the echo of your absence. Now, years later, when people ask me why I left, I tell them this. When someone spends years erasing you, the kindest thing you can do for yourself is walk away, and let them live with the empty space you leave behind. My family taught me something invaluable. Love should never feel like humiliation. Silence should never feel like punishment. And your worth should never depend on whether somebody else can see it. So when Mom asked that day, "When's your wedding?" I answered truthfully, I had mine. And I had my grief. My survival. My strength. My rebirth. My revenge wasn't destroying them. It was finally choosing me. The one person they never bothered to choose.